Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here for this iteration of the virtual learning series for entrepreneurs that is hosted by the Emory Entrepreneur Network. Today we have Aditya Rao, the Entrepreneur Network president, here as our moderator. And welcome, and he'll get us started.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited for this session. I know we have a small group, which we might change the format a little bit. I know people will jump in as we go along, but if we have a smaller group, we can have it. Such as intimate group, we can have video on and have people interact. Usually, we try to kind of moderate that just to keep things under control. Things don't get too rowdy, but the smaller group, we could have it more of an intimate session. But I'm very excited for the session and our guest speaker today. And just to give you a very quick intro, Parul Bhandari is a customer success strategist, Inc. magazine columnist, and a co-author of the recently launched The Customer Success Talent Playbook. I'm super excited to get my copy to read it. So she's recognized among the top 25 global thought leaders in customer success in 2025 and brings 2 decades of experience helping organizations scale post-sale excellence. So Parul is also the founder of Customer X Success and has coached hundreds of leaders on building customer-first teams that drive growth and retention. So this is very, very a relevant topic, obviously, for entrepreneurs, me included. So I'm super excited. Parul, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Wonderful to be here and I'm seeing a couple familiar faces too, which is really nice to see you on here. My name is Parul, as Aditya mentioned, and I'm really excited to take you through a framework that I've developed kind of over the years of working in customer success, which is a framework to help uncover gaps in customer value and help companies to deliver value. And as we mentioned, this is a bit of a smaller group, so feel free to, I think engage on our topics here. We don't need to, we can kind of make it a conversation today. I am based in Chicago, for those that may not know. I think you learned a little bit about my business. And I've recently became an author in the last year. I write children's books, and then I also became the author of this book, which is the Customer Success Talent Playbook, which I'm very excited about. And some other kind of things about me. I am a mom of 2, and I'm a big fan of food, and I also am a fan of fitness. It kind of, works together. Nice duality there. I am a graduate of the Emory class of full-time MBA 2010. And I just recently went to my 15-year reunion, which was so fantastic. So really lovely to be a part of the community and getting to do this session. Well, let's talk a little bit about something fun for those here. We've got a small group, so the odds are in your favor. But we're going to be doing a book giveaway. So if you're able to stay till the end, we will mine our Zoom and do a random giveaway of the new book, which I'll be mailing to you. So stick around for that. This book is a new book entering the customer success scene, written by 6 women CS leaders. And our goal is really to drive advocacy for both individual contributors and leaders in the space. We designed this book with both perspectives in mind. So if you do give it a read, I would love to hear your feedback on it. So what are we here talking about today? We're talking about the thing that matters most, right? Which is money, right? As we know. But disclaimer, I'm in customer success. So I'm going to contend that the thing that matters most, I don't know what happened to my slide here. I'm going to contend the thing that matters most is actually customer value. And if my slide wants to cooperate, it's going to say customer value, but it didn't. But we're going to keep moving. So I want to ask the group, this is a fun little poll to kick us off. How do you confirm customer value today? What are the methodologies that you use in your business or your industry to confirm that you're delivering on the value that you believe you're delivering on? Love to hear. So I think you can scan this QR code. You can also join using the link provided, and go ahead and give it a little vote. Let's see what people think. And I think I did it as a multi-select. I believe you should be able to select multiple. if you use multiple methods?
It's taking a bit to load, just
Oh, is
FYI.
it? Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
technology, but maybe it's my
maybe it's
internet
our
too.
technology gap. Well, we can also chime in and say, does anyone want to give a note of how they um, collect or confirm customer value today?
Uh, uh, I'm happy to jump in to kick it off.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think for me, so I have a little startup too, as technology a SaaS platform. It's unfortunately, I would love to say data because I'm a data guy, but that's not true. It's more a guess and a little bit of customer validation. Like if I launch a new feature, kind of ask people, hey, does that work well? But other than that, we don't. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're probably not alone, to be honest. And the reason I like to do this is it's okay to guess. I think many businesses are are playing a little guesswork, and that's why we're going to talk about today some strategies to hopefully help you get to that customer validation or that true data confirmation. Anyone else have a thought on how they confirm value? Okay, well, I'm not going to put anyone on the
Oh,
spot. I won't pick.
we
Oh,
had
Michael,
Mike.
go
Mike.
ahead. Well, Michael, I was going to pick on you, to be honest, because
Yeah, I
I know
was
you.
trying to unmute
So yeah.
myself. So whoever released that function, thank you so much. But yeah, so I think, for me, it's obviously customer validation. Those conversations when we have those one-on-ones with our clients, QBRs, EBRs, or even just check-ins, is so valid. However, I think we guess, right? Because
Yeah.
even when people tell us everything is great, there's so many factors, right? So those are my two.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and having the conversations is awesome. If you're a large business, though, you might not have conversations with every customer, right? So it is challenging to really understand value at every level, as many businesses are learning. So I'm just going to share an example. This is actually like a true example that I dealt with at a company several years ago, without naming names here. We had an engaged customer. Metrics were aligned in year one. We started tracking those metrics. 5 years in, they had achieved an incredible number, which was 80% reduction in their overhead costs for their business. And we were like thrilled, right? We were like, we did it. We achieved success. Shortly after that 5 year mark, the customer churned. And I might say, what went wrong, right? We were all like, what went wrong? Well, there was actually a thing, and I don't know if, again, we're having some slides issues here. Stakeholder actually changed is what went wrong. So I'm going to share a little bit more of what actually happened. Year one metrics were aligned in year one. Often you have a salesperson talking about, hey, what are your goals, right? When at the point of sale, and everything is aligned in year one, but they weren't aligned every single year. When a stakeholder changed, everything changed. So our early stakeholder cared about overhead. Our later stakeholder didn't even count that in their metrics, didn't even include that value on their scorecard, wasn't measured on that value, and wasn't incentivized on that value. So one, we could have done some re-education, right? We should have done some re-education and said, hey, new stakeholder, here's why we deliver this amazing result, and here's why you should add it to your scorecard. That wasn't necessarily done. We should every year realign our goals, right? So as a customer success person, our activity involves doing yearly success plans, right? And making sure that we know what customer goals are. And then validation, what Michael was mentioning, right? Actually confirming with your customer that this is what they needed. This wasn't necessarily the case. And this was a big lesson learned from for that organization. I wasn't there for the whole 5 years, so I was only unfortunately there at the end when the customer churn occurred. And it was, I think, organizationally, we had to look back. One of my big things in customer success and what I love to work with founders on, especially early stage founders, is what you do in those early years, how you set up your contracts, what your plan is, how you set up your customer success organization. All of that really does matter 5 years later, 10 years later. It can come back to haunt you if it's not done correctly. Just because of this, for the sake of this slide, I might just ask you all again, and we can skip having to do the interaction on it. But I'm curious if anyone can just give us a thumbs up, or if you want to chime in. Have you ever been surprised when a customer said, I don't actually find your product valuable? Have you ever been surprised? You can give us a thumbs up, you can unmute. Oh, go ahead. Go for it, Aditya.
Michael, go ahead and I'll jump in after you.
No, I mean, the quick answer is yes, because, we look at usage or we look at, meeting the success criteria after the onboarding, and then we finally get maybe a super user, or like you said, change in leadership that realigns everything, and they're saying, well, actually, time saving for that aspect of our business isn't really a big deal, and you're like, your mind is blown, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You had
Yeah.
this awesome, beautiful metrics dashboard. It didn't matter to them, right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of the sad reality sometimes. Go ahead, Aditya.
Yeah, it happens so often. And it's like I'm so confident and convinced that they need something, and I do it. And then they're like, yeah. I'm like, what? How is that possible? That you should be looking at this metric. It-
Yeah.
I'll
That's
even go one step further and say that we've built features that they said that they needed, right? That was the bridge factor to maybe earning that business and building what we thought was a strategic partner. And that feature wasn't something that they used.
Yeah, 100%. And like it's a big job, right? It's not to be taken lightly. You really have to understand so much about your business, and you really have to understand so much about your customer. In the world of SaaS and technology, like this is actually a critical reason why customer success evolved. And for those that are aware, and I actually talk about this in my section of the book, we're one of the newest functions on the block, right? We've only really been around in practice since the late 90s, right? 1990s. So if you think about why this evolution came about, it's because value is the driver of, especially for software or subscription businesses, retention, advocacy, and growth, just to name a few, right? If you are not in a SaaS business or a subscription business, this still is coming into play. We're seeing this come into play for B2C companies, right? Or even like physical product companies as they try to build customer loyalty, right? And as they try to build repeat customers. So value is the critical element that without it, you likely are not going to see that retention or that advocacy or that growth, right? You might have somebody that said, oh yeah, I bought this product, it was fine, it did its job, right? But did they actually benefit from it? And did they actually get the value that you think they got? That needs true validation. So that's part of what this exercise is going to be. And I'll show you some of the tools that I've got for you. Now, what drives value, right? So let's dial it back a little bit and say, what do we need to know and what do we need to understand? Aligned metrics and outcomes, that's in the world of software and SaaS customer success leaders, that's what we're really responsible for is, are we delivering on outcomes, right? Yes, customer X might have asked for this feature and then later they didn't care about it. But if that feature is delivering an outcome that they requested that is essential to their business, you're still likely winning, right? They might not be as excited as we thought about it, but remember, we go back to what's the real purpose, right? If that is delivering value, great. If it was like a nice to have, maybe that's also a prioritization metric for you as a business leader to say, hey, this is a nice to have. It's not really checking a box on the metric scorecard. So maybe we're going to put it a little further down the line. So that could be an example. Confirmed ROI. This one's trickier, right? So what is ROI? I'm dealing with a customer right now, a client of mine right now. ROI is better sales, right? Growth in their business in the form of sales. But how many other things in their business can impact that sale, right? There's many other things that I, as a software provider, may not have control over. But confirming ROI is super important. Has anyone had, and you can just also chime in or you can put your hand up if you want, has anyone had a customer say, I can't give you access to all of my revenue metrics? We have them on an internal dashboard, but we can't share that with you. Have you ever heard that from a client or a customer? It does happen. So I've had some huge clients that they were very protective over their dashboard, right? They couldn't share their full revenue dashboard with us. They could share anecdotally, like they would tell us things. We had to really dig to confirm ROI, but confirming that ROI, I remember in a conversation with them one time, she said, my champion said, we've had the best year ever, right? And I was like, aha, okay, let's dig into that statement. What does that mean, right? And even though we couldn't see it, we were able to confirm it. The third one is a tough one. The third one is probably the hardest thing that we have to solve for as customer-facing people, which is perceived experience, right? You can create the best experience possible that you think that you have control over, but what the customer actually perceives, that is a whole different beast. That actually is where validation is key, right? Now, let's talk honestly about validation. Is a customer always honest with the vendor? Have you ever had a customer say, hey, everything's great, we're definitely going to renew, and then they don't? I'm sure every business leader has gone through that. So perceived experience, again, they can tell you one thing and do another. Yeah, that's definitely something that happens in business. So how do you solve for that, right? How do you ensure that their experience is equivalent to what you're talking about? So in the next slide, I'm going to outline kind of some of my answers to some of these problems, right? And this is not, obviously, this is not encompassing everything that's possible, but I think if you look at these 4 areas, it's a great starting point to help really dig into and understand what you might be missing in your business.
Parul,
Yeah. Yeah.
Michael unmuted. Michael, were you
Oh,
trying to say something? Sorry.
yeah.
Oh, no, I was just 100% smiling in agreement. Not necessarily having a comment because I'm truly believing what you're saying. Yeah.
Right.
Great. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So I call this, it's a fancy name. I call it the diagnostic framework for customer value. Why did I put this name together? Because I really do want it to be an analysis tool, something that I use with my clients, but someone that basically anyone can use. It's a really simple Excel document. I need to make it cooler and probably put in an AI tool now that I can. But it was designed with what I would do for my clients, questions I would ask my clients in a basic assessment. And then I was like, hey, anyone could use this, right? So, and I'll share the link to it at the end as well. It's broken down into these 4 kind of what I call elements that drive success, right? So when it comes to value, what are 4 areas to confirm that are occurring that's going to help drive retention in your business? One is value clarity. Are you aligned to what your customer thinks value is? That's that going back to my example of that 5-year customer churning. We obviously didn't track what they were tracking in that example, right? That was a big miss. That's value clarity. Value delivery. Is the customer actually receiving the value that you promise? So again, we don't have to call out names or businesses, but has anyone ever worked at a startup where there were a lot of bugs or a lot of issues? That delivery, although you say, I am giving you X, when there is a bug or when there are issues, that delivery starts to break down, right? So although you believe you are still delivering, support does come into play, right? Then we have value perception, right? So does the customer feel that they're actually receiving value? Do they actually, this is the hardest part, as I've said, right? It's confirming with them. Last but not least is value expansion. So this is the true goal of, especially in software businesses nowadays, of why we are customer success people and what our mission is to unlock growth. This other side of the revenue bow tie, if you're familiar with that frame or that concept, that's the expansion growth. That's the untapped value that you can truly gain from your customers if they are in this value exchange with you. Okay. So we're going to dig into each of these. I'm going to share with you kind of key questions that I ask, but I want to qualify this because this is not an activity we will do together today, but there is an activity for everyone to take back and do on their own. This very simple process that I've outlined is to help you individually diagnose value, right? Understand your gaps, understand where your value lies, design an action plan for success, and then plan for some sustainable growth. Once you've answered a lot of your gaps, you can then start to expand your customers, right? And you might even have some customers you can expand before you've addressed all the gaps, which is a wonderful thing if you do have that. But this is really like, I think the whole cycle is how do we get to expansion and growth in a way that is really, really achievable. Any questions, by the way? I'm just talking and I didn't stop. So let me take a pause. Questions? Okay. All right. Please do pause or unmute if you do have a question. Okay, let's start with value clarity. So the worksheet that I'm giving you, this is literally what you're going to get. It's questions and you're going to score your company based on these questions. For each question, I also give you measurable kind of insights or ideas of things that you could then apply if you have a gap, right? So it's pretty simplistic in its format. But the reason I do this is because it's a really easy way to get started on value. Like you could do this today. It'll take you probably 20 minutes to map out an initial action plan. And I love the simplicity of that for especially busy founders. Value clarity. So are you aligned on what your customer thinks value is, right? Or what value means to your customer? So one is, do we have a clear definition of customer success. Now, I don't mean the function customer success, but is there a clear definition of what customer success looks like with your product or platform? And you may not have this. I mean, some businesses, especially if you're very early stage, you might not even know yet, right? You might still be developing this. It can change, but starting off with what is the goal is super important. Another story of a founder I worked with, I was interviewing for the job and I was like, what's the value prop of this product, right? What are you trying to do? And I had listened to him on some podcasts, so I made some guesses and he's like, kind of, maybe, we're not really sure. He was very early stage. He didn't know yet what it was that he was trying to do with this product. But based on what he had said in podcasts, I was like, well, here's some ideas. Let's start with this, right? Let's start to work towards some actual trackable metrics. That's the second one, value metrics, right? Are there KPIs we can actually measure? You can have a great idea of what customer success looks like, but if you can't measure it, it didn't exist, right? I think everyone knows that is at all data minded. So what are the measurable KPIs? And then do all the stakeholders agree? So when I get my stakeholders in the room, maybe it's a once a year meeting, or maybe it's more, do we all agree on what success looks like? And do we do it again and again every year? Do we repeat that activity, right? Success only looks like what it looks like on their metric scorecard for that year or that period. So sometimes it's also important to be aligned with your customer's calendar, right? For success. That's value clarity. Again, super simplistic. You'll go through the exercise and actually score yourself on each of these elements. And then there are some like ideas or recommended kind of tactics to take on. The next one is value delivery. Now, value delivery is, remember what I was talking about, are you actually delivering the value you say you're delivering, right? So I'm going to give you this product that does X. I'm going to give you a product like, if it's MailChimp, right? I'm going to give you a product that you can actually create a newsletter and send it out. If I try to send out my newsletter and there's a bug that day, my newsletter doesn't send, that's a lack of value, right? In the world of software, and I think probably soon to see in other areas too, there's now a whole movement around outcome-based pricing or value-based pricing, right? Where that's coming from is saying, I'm actually delivering you MailChimp, allowing you to send that email. So now I'll price you based on how many times you want to hit send on that email, right? So if you have a product that is that transactional, you can actually, with the right value delivery, you can actually price based on that. But it's key to understand what that value delivery looks like. So one is, do you have the customer actually going into the product and using it in the way that drives outcomes? Michael, you kind of said something, but I think it's really important too, if you're a product leader, to have an idea of what is the utilization in all the elements. Like if I release this cool feature, is there any utilization on it, right? If you're not getting utilization on it, that becomes also a gap for you to assess and say, what's going on? So adoption and usage, it's so funny. I was like having a talk with one of my product leaders right now, and they were like, how much data do you need, CS? And I'm like, give me all of it. I want all of the data because I don't want to guess as to what I need today. I want to see where the gaps are. I want to see what's not being done so I can analyze and assess, right? So that's where adoption usage becomes really key. Enablement. Have we actually enabled our customer, right? Especially important in, I think, low touch businesses. High touch businesses, we tend to give them a lot of love and care and we tend to hold their hand. But when it comes to low touch businesses, how many times do people turn? Okay, I'm going to ask the group again. Have you ever tried a software, signed up for it, maybe even paid, and not used it ever?
Oh yeah, all the time. Because I'm so confident that I'm going to use the tool because I'm like, oh, this
Yes.
is a great idea. I will use it and make my life easier. And then it never happens. Like I never end up using it properly, or
Yeah.
I don't know, it just sits there.
I have paid for something for a year, you guys, right now that I'm not using, that I'm like, what is going on, Pearl? Really, really. Every month I put on my calendar, I'm going to analyze my use. Here's the problem. Without the right enablement or without the right tools to use this product, if the customer has to have a huge uphill battle to get there, that could become a factor of churn. So value delivery can be impaired, right? Am I getting the value of that product that I'm paying for a year? I feel like I've exposed myself now with that information. No, I'm definitely not, right? So I am a candidate for churn. I am revenue at risk, right, for that business. The last bit is support and responsiveness. I think we talked about this, right? How quickly do you resolve issues? People expect there will be issues with the product, right? But how do you actually resolve those issues and how quickly do you take that resolution. I'm going to switch over from software to another industry, which is more of a B2C industry. I actually last year tried out different clothing delivery services. So like where you rent clothes. One, I tried it, everything, I didn't really like it. It was all pretty shrunken and terrible. I messaged the customer success support line, and she was like, we don't really have a solution for what you've already rented. What we can do is give you a discount on future purchases. I'm like, my value is not achieved. I'm not likely to purchase in the future, right? Similar scenario happened with another product where I had an issue with one item that I rented. I'm a big clothing renter, I guess. And one item, and they quickly swapped it out and said, here's a credit, swap out what you need, no cost. We're gonna let you swap it as many times as you want. They resolved that issue in a different way, similar kind of paths, right? But allowed me to quickly resolve my existing issue rather than a future issue that I was gonna have, right? So as a customer support person, or if you're setting up your support organization, it's also important to think about how does support play into value delivery, right? We often think of it as like reactive and just in time, and not as, high on the totem pole of maybe things that you are going to prioritize. But support can be a driver of churn. Okay, we're going to move on. Please let me know if anyone has questions along the way. We're going to look at value perception. So now this is the hardest one, right? How do I know my customer how do I know that they feel that they're actually receiving value? So this is where you're going to have to do the work, right? And this is, I think, the hardest work there is to do. One is executive visibility. So do you have ownership across all of your stakeholders? I'll ask the group another question. Have you ever had a customer churn who was an avid user of your product, who the end users loved it, but the CFO decided it was too expensive? Anyone been in that experience?
We're too small, so we don't have that problem, but
it could happen. So like it happens, I think, with a lot of multi-tiered organizations, right? Hierarchical organizations where everybody's not an end user. CFO doesn't use it, doesn't really care how. They're just like, hey, can I cut my costs? Great. What we miss in that example is CFO visibility and accountability, right? So making sure you're really multi-threaded. You hear that term in the industry. In customer success, it's super important to be multi-threaded and make sure that you really understand what each stakeholder is responsible for. Customer satisfaction. This is one that's a little bit, I'll be honest, is a little bit controversial these days, but I still am a big proponent of a survey. You need to know something, especially if you don't have any data. Having a point in time survey, although it's not the best piece of data, if your customer is reporting high levels of satisfaction and trust, say in support tickets and in other areas, you can glean some positive insights from that. But I wouldn't use survey data alone, right? Survey data alone is not going to tell you the truth. Most people often answer a survey based on how they're feeling in that moment. So you have to use it coupled with your multi-threading or your other kind of elements. But my favorite one on value perception is, is your customer willing to be an advocate and refer you to their friends? And will they actually do that referral, right? That to me is the biggest driver of perception, because friends will not steer their friends wrong, right? I'm not going to say, Aditya, use this product that I think is terrible, right? Because you're going to be like, wow, Parul gave me the worst product suggestion. No, I'm not going to do that, right? So brand advocacy is a great one to consider. Any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I think a majority of our customers it's word of mouth, it's friends referring friends. It's not all our marketing. It's none of that. It's really someone saying, yeah, use this tool. You got to go use it. It saved me so much time. And then they reach out. And that's when it usually make the sale, because you've already been validated by this person who's a friend and they hopefully trust. So absolutely.
I love to hear that. I mean, that's a great marketing tool. I mean, if you have that built in, that's an awesome marketing tool. Referral marketing, especially industry by industry, can be one of the biggest drivers of growth. In this case, it can be a driver of retention, right? If somebody is willing to actually be that reference and that referral, you can then have a little bit of more, I'm blanking on my words today. You can have a little bit more confirmation that they're getting the perceived value, right? So is it perfect? Is this a perfect formula? No, but when you have all three, you then boost up your value perception. I will do a plug for products. There are products out there right now that are doing really interesting, kind of cool things on survey. They're taking an alternative approach to getting value confirmation from customers using third-party survey systems and stuff. So like sometimes a customer might not tell you how they feel, but they'll tell a third party how they feel. So there are some other ways and other products out there. You know, I didn't include those in here, but if anyone ever wants to chat about that, you can also ping me, and happy to share some of those products. Okay, and then the most important one for why we're even here, right? Value is where you are going to unlock future growth. Doesn't matter if you're B2B, B2C, whatever, right? People that refer you to their friends, even if your product is, you know, a physical product. I always think about one of our friends from business school, one of my classmates who did beautiful curly me. You know, early stage marketing for them was word of mouth, friends and people that they knew. People that you know are going to help you grow, but this is where you really need to understand what is happening so that you can unlock that additional growth. So one is your customer adopting new features or new use cases? This is more relevant for software, I think. But if they are asking for adopting new features and new use cases, it does mean that they're kind of more engaged in your software, right? So if they're in there and they're actually trying new things, that is a sign of engagement. That is a positive kind of step towards individual sort of expansion opportunity. Strategic partnership. Are you a partner or are you a vendor? Right now, if you're a small company and you're B2C, like you might be just very well be a vendor. But even smaller companies are finding ways to create strategic partnerships, even at the B2C level. Everyone knows like loyalty programs, referral programs. I'm like an advocate for this product. It's a cool product. It's called Step In. It's like you have to walk to use your social media. I'm an advocate in their program because I've been using it for 6 months or whatever, right? It's like, cool. They've kept me in and they gave me like they sent me a mug, right? So now I'm like a big time advocate and I share it with all my friends, right? So if you build even that level of, hey, you're one level up, you're not just a vendor, you're a strategic partner or you're somebody that's respected, you can now unlock future expansion. So when that app goes live, who's going to be the first to buy it? Probably the referral partners and the advocates, right? And then the last one is renewal and expansion. So renewal in some businesses looks different, right? Renewal business can be just a person buying a second time or a third time, and expansion. This year I did an interview with an interesting founder. She's a founder of a South Asian products company called Culture Khazana. So she actually builds South Asian products like puzzles, a Rangoli puzzle, right? She relies on renewing customers and expansion for her growth. Everybody that likes the first puzzle they bought is likely going to buy the next product that she comes out with. Similar in software, we want that customer not only to buy and renew that same module, we want them to actually expand, right? We want them to grow into our full suite or whatever we're going to offer in the future. So understanding, is that renewal happening pretty easily? Are we proactive in that process, or is it a slow process, right? Is it something that is dragging? These are going to help unlock those additional growth opportunities. And you might say, what is proactively driving renewals and expansion? If you're a customer that works at a large company, like I'm going to say like a Salesforce, right? You have a massive long tail. Are you going to be proactive with your long tail? Are you going to have a CSM assigned? Probably not. But are you going to build in systems, maybe AI agents nowadays, right? Maybe other low touch tools that make a customer still feel like they're a strategic partner, even when they're not, right? This is the leveling up that I think AI gives a lot of businesses. No matter your size, you can really level up with some cool kind of offerings for your customer base now, at much more scalable prices, right? So that's kind of a cool future outlook. Okay, so those are the 4 kind of key areas. What you're going to do if you do choose to do this assessment, or even if you just wanted to listen in today, the goal of it is to create an action plan, right? So it's, what are you going to operationalize internally? What do you need to align with your cross-functional partners? Hey, product team, we noticed you released this functionality and it didn't really, no one took the bait. No one's using it. What else do we need to do, right? That's a cross-functional engagement. You might not have sole ownership for that. But those 2 first, operationalizing internally and aligning cross-functionally, are probably the first steps of your action plan. The third one is, now where am I going to take this and engage externally? What am I going to do with my actual customer to ensure that I'm meeting all these areas? So when and if you choose to download the spreadsheet, it's basically like a pretty easy value exercise where you go through and you score yourself on each of these questions that I posed earlier. And if you have a low score, you take on an action plan, right? Or if you have a score that you would like to improve, you take on an action plan. So it's pretty simple. Remember, understanding value is the core of it. And this comes from our own Emory, kind of professor, right? Who is well known in the industry. But understanding value is really about understanding what your customer wants, what's their aspiration, what's their frustration, right? What are the things that are causing them friction and for you to reduce them? And it's probably the biggest goal that most companies have when they start and they build in a niche is I'm going to reduce friction in X, right? But remember, just having that goal is not going to be enough. You really need to engage in that full cycle for your long-term success as a company. So anyways, that's the end of this for me. I do not have too much more, so happy to open up to some discussion. This is the download, and we're going to share this also. So if you don't get it now, we'll share out the link. This is the download for the assessment that you can do for your own company. And yeah, that's about it for me. I'd love to take any questions or just discuss if anyone wants to talk through any of these elements.
Thank you, Parul. We will send out the links so folks can download whether you're on or even for the rest of the group who registered. But feel free to unmute, ask questions if you like. It's not going to be very often that you get a one-on-one time directly with Parul, so take advantage of it for sure.
I have a quick question. One theme that I saw in the 4 stages was engagement. So do you have any suggestions on how to engage, the stakeholder value recognition, or how to engage to get the expansion, and do you map that as well, or do you just map the 4 steps?
So, I mean, it depends on the business, I would say, obviously, right? The type of the business. Typically, I think in a software business, we'll have key engagement points. Funny enough, Michael, we're going to talk about this next week because Michael is actually joining one of my clients right now. But one of the things is how do you engage with different stakeholders in that organization, right? So where you have a top tier leadership, you might have a smaller, shorter powwow with them on a regular basis, just to make sure that you're aligning on all the key criteria that buyer is interested in, right? So who's your champion, who's your buyer, that you might set cadences with them. You might have cadences with the next tier down, who might be the actual people facilitating use of your product. And you might not actually have a cadence every time with your end users, but you might build some tooling and other processes around it to support staying engaged with your end user. So I'm a big fan of in-app tools for software. If you have a software product and you're able to build something in-app to engage with your user where they are, it not only drives traffic to the product, it keeps that user engaged and it lets them navigate really quickly to where they're going. So I think different examples for different user types. And then, I'm a big fan of workflows, right? So every year, actually, we're just building for one of our teams, what does the year one workflow look like? When you're with your customer in year one, you're probably more engaged. You're probably going to do a little more hand-holding in year one. As they gain maturity, you're probably going to be able to let them cruise a little bit more, but still, what are critical junctures? Do you have an annual business review? Do you have a, kind of a point in time that you want to use as a checkpoint? So business by business may vary, right? It definitely different in a B2C or even a non-software business, but that's just an example for software.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Larry, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to first thank you very much. I've been in SaaS software in the medical arena, and shouldn't be surprised given the gray hair, but I'm always surprised at how some, selling to doctors, some customers put you in the vendor box and you can't get out, and other customers see you as a strategic partner and you feel like you're doing the rest, across the organization, sales, training, support, you feel like you're doing the same thing, treating them the same way, delivering the same way, but yet just based on maybe their prior experience or just their personality, they just totally perceive you as a valued partner versus just another vendor, and it's just always surprised at how you feel like you could be doing the same thing and yet somebody loves you and somebody doesn't love you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is definitely a challenge. And I believe in the world of software and customer success. I had CSMs with 70 customers, and were they all perfectly strategic relationships? Probably not. But I think there are some opportunities to drive success. So as your organization grows, especially, one of the ways that we saw really like great connections was if you could bring in customers to be advisors, right? Giving them a little bit more of a, I mean, based on their size and segmentation, right? I'm not going to say everybody, giving them opportunity to actually be a part of designing the future of your company. So customer advisory boards, conferences, right? Little things where you might engage them on a more personal level. But even simple things, if they are a long tail customer, right? Like building that referral program, that advocacy program. I will say probably the biggest thing for me though has been finding out what drives them, right? What's their incentive? So if they're a physician, right? And I hate to say this nowadays, I'm going to make some assumptions, but physicians nowadays, they have a quota. They have to get like they're on a time schedule, right? So if you're going to introduce something that is going to drag in their day or create barriers to their day, like having a meeting in the middle of the day, they might not want to engage, right?
Right.
But working them with them to say like, okay, what's a good time of day for you to meet, or what's a good time of week for you to engage? Is it Friday when you have your admin day? Okay, great. Let's chat together and let's actually work on what's going to drive success for you as an individual. Are you going to win with every single customer? Maybe not, but I think as long as there are opportunities for them to feel a part of your ecosystem, not just like they're using your product, that's usually where I've seen success.
Yeah. Something you just said, thank you. You said you had organizations where CSMs had 70 customers. We're partners with Athena Health, and the CSMs at Athena Health have 70 to 90 customers. And, that's a little unwieldy. And can you comment on stack ranking them? And, one strategy I think is, if they're a small customer, maybe you're just meeting once a year versus once a month versus once a quarter, depending on the size you talked a lot about does the customer perceive value, but you also have to value from the business, what is the value to you of that customer, right? We have some, as an example, we have one doctor office is not the same value to us. We have 200 doctors, I have customers in that range. So obviously we're going to do more for the 200 doctor customer than the one doctor customer.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, so it sounds like what you had, and I'm going to turn off this share screen so I can see people better. It sounds like your experience was very similar to kind of probably one of my experiences where my CSMs did have a lot of customers. They were different segments and tiers. So naturally, they did spend more effort and more time with their global enterprise level, right? As we called it at that time, versus their SMB or their business customers. But interestingly, every customer was valuable, right? Because we actually had so much white space with some of our smaller customers, depending on what their size was. There was either white space analysis that we had done, or if they got acquired by a larger entity, it also
right.
opened future
Sure.
opportunities for us. So
Yeah.
we actually segmented kind of creatively in that business to make sure that while we still had different ways that we worked with people, we didn't ignore them completely. There's some cool things happening though in the space. And what I'll mention is I used MailChimp, funny as an example. It was just top of mind because MailChimp recently did some work with their long tail, and it's been in like the customer success news. They actually engaged an offshore vendor to work with their long tail customers because they learned, even though they had this long tail and it's maybe only 20% of their business, 20% of a multi-million-dollar business is a lot of money lost if they're churning, right? So they actually took on an engaged approach using offshore resources to help supplement their overhead. And they actually engage with those long tail at renewal and throughout their life cycle and improved their numbers. I think they improved their retention significantly, like 80% or something, right, of that long tail. So I still think though businesses will struggle, and you're working with Athena Health, they're huge, right? They're going to struggle to give the same value to everyone. But in the day and age of offshore resources, AI tools, right? We have a lot more at our disposal that I would consider like, could you employ an AI agent to
Right.
work with that
Yeah.
customer a little more,
Yeah.
and in a low cost scalable way.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the term long tail. How are
Oh,
you?
long tail is, I'm sorry. So it's like your small customers. You might
Yeah.
have many of them, and they might make up only, let's say, 20% of your overall business, where your big customers make up like 80% of your overall business.
Okay.
You get 80% more love. But the long tail, what we say about the long tail is the bigger you get, the tail is more valuable, right? It might be 10,000 at some point, it might be, 10 million at another point. So are you willing to churn $10 million of your business? So it's an opportunity, especially for a lot of the tooling out there, which is like, can you get some engagement in a different format or a different way that's not as high a cost, but you still work with them?
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Pearl, to that the long tail discussion. Now I've worked with a couple of software platforms and big ones. So Salesforce, Spot, Tableau, where I use them. I'm a big user of Tableau. Um, I'm the long tail. I'm very small fry. Now, but I'm also an early adopter for any functionality that comes in. I paid extra, even as a small company, to get their AI tools. They have done a terrible job. So it's tough. I'm sure it's really tough to engage, but they've done a terrible job of engaging me. And I'm like, I'm one of your, like, they literally said, I think you're one of our first AI module customers. Because it was more expensive. So I'm assuming a bigger customer of theirs would think twice before, upgrading everyone to this new, very expensive thing. And I was like, I want to try it. So AI, I need help, speed up my process here. Not done a great job. And I'm like, guys, you're like, I don't know how you treat other people, but I'm pissed off. I'm like ready to be like, if I can find another product, I'm going to go there. If I get a little better, I'd rather go to a small company now that treats me like a important customer than one of numbers. So I know it's hard to
Yeah.
manage because I am so small, but this is a very interesting discussion because I'm seeing that. I'm like, guys are not doing a great job there. So
Well, and you're at risk. I mean, you might be small for them today, but you could grow. Like future opportunity is
yeah,
unknown. Your business could expand
yeah,
tenfold, and then they've lost you. I think that's interesting that you make that point. A lot of smaller companies, like I also lean to work with smaller vendors, and it's the same thing. For a smaller vendor, you're a bigger fish, versus a large vendor where you're not. I will tell you this, and I stand by this statement. With the new tools that are out there, I think we're going to see more engagement from these large vendors, large companies coming to the long tail, the smaller entities, because they're going to finally be able to do it. They haven't been able, because like Salesforce or a company like Salesforce, they probably have a margin per head that they have to keep up, and they probably aren't able to do it today. But we're going to see that world change, and they're going to also benefit from it, right? It's going to benefit their business to keep some of these small advocates long term that are going to help them, not churn out. Still, they're churning millions of dollars when they lose customers like you. It's still a big number, right? They just probably haven't been able to do it to date. Um, but I think many businesses do make those decisions, right? And even me, like I'm working right now at a startup that literally just launched. It just went into the market. The company didn't even exist. We're working with some big vendors, but we've actually engaged other vendors that are a little bit smaller because we know that we can work with them directly, right? And that we can actually get the CEO on the phone, right? So yeah, for the small vendors out there, I think this is where it behoves you to also play the high touch concierge game while you can until it becomes cost ineffective. Play that game while you can. It can help you to land some deals. I mentioned I had this very large customer that wouldn't share their revenue data. I worked at a company where most of our business was like 50K. We had one customer that was $12 million annually. And they chose to pay us $12 million annually because they knew they could work with us one to one, right? And that we would actually design our roadmap around them, right? So even large companies will make those decisions based on what you're saying, bad experience or bad inability to actually influence change, right? So
yeah. And I have an example of that is the Beltline, Atlanta Beltline. We work with them, and they love us because of that, because they are our biggest customer. We're not losing them.
yeah.
So we do whatever it takes. We're like, yeah, sure. For you guys, we'll do this, right? We need a little customization. Yep, we'll take care of it. Don't worry about it, right? But it's important because we are small fry. I mean, we're a very small vendor for them, but they're depending on us for a lot of their data and whatever they're doing. But yeah, we'll bend over backwards to make sure they're happy, right? And so I can totally see that.
And just I'm going to toot my book horn for another second. So I wrote this section of this book and it's all titles and salary. So it's not the most sexiest material. You're not like, wow, this is so cool. The reason I wrote it is because there are different titles that can help you as a leader achieve success that differentiate in your team what roles and responsibilities are. So you can have somebody like for your Bell client, a strategic CSM who is really dedicated and devoted to them and is almost an embedded member of their team versus a regular CSM who might take 50 customers, right? And do more like kind of general like hunt, farming of those customers, right? You can actually design those titles appropriately so that your business can also be sustained. Because you also don't want to have a CSM with Bell and then 50 other clients. Who are they going to work with only? They're only going to work with that one client primarily, right? So then your other clients go into a disservice. So I think sometimes design of team can also help drive success in how you think of like your business model.
That does make a lot of sense because we are, facing that because technically I'm the guy working with the bell
You're
line,
the CSM.
and I'm the CSM, and then I'm like not looking at my other customers. I'm like, oh, I've got to go back and like, focus on them too, and give them some love as well because I don't want to lose them either.
Right.
They're much smaller, but it is hard because I'm like it's a small organization. We're like, I don't have the time. I only have so many hours in the day. Or how am I gonna like make every small customer happy as well? Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're happy with the tool, they're using it, they're not gonna go anywhere. But I don't know.
Yeah. That's a challenge. I mean, and again, I'll say the same thing to you. Like, look into the AI tools, and I'm happy to if you want to chat about it. I have some vendors I'm working with, like even some small vendors that are launching new products that are willing to take clients for very cheap. There are AI CSMs, like they can just help make your world, your day to day a little bit better, right? And because at the end of the day, you don't want to risk losing that big client. You also don't want to risk losing the other clients. So,
No.
how do you do it all if you can't actually hire a body? There are some great options out there now. So.
Any other questions? Any of the other attendees? We've been kind of quiet on this call.
I have to call out Parisa is my niece's name. So whoever's Parisa's iPhone, I'm very, very excited to see that name. Love that. Yeah,
That's okay.
hopefully it's a helpful conversation. I know
No, but
you're
this has been
too. Yeah.
absolutely helpful. I think it's important for as entrepreneurs to understand the concepts here. So, Parul, if there aren't any more. Oh, sorry, Parisa just went.
Hi, I just wanted to say hi and just let you know how much insightful this presentation was, and thank you very much for what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. And I love your name.
Oh, thank you. So is your niece, does your niece have Iranian background?
No, my sister just loved the name, and both kids have my niece is Parisa and my nephew is Pasha. So she picked both like Middle Eastern names. Yes.
That's so interesting. Well, it
Very
was
cool.
very nice meeting you.
Same, likewise.
Well, thank you, Parisa. And if any other questions? If there aren't, Parul, again, thank you so much for taking the time. The video for this will be put online, and Lindsay will send an update with the links and any the content, including your framework that folks can use. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you at the next one.
We will let you know about the book giveaway. Look in your email.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the book
Email
giveaway.
yes.
So we'll do that over email, Parul?
Yeah, well, I think that might be easiest.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
good. We'll do that. Alrighty. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you. Have a
Have a
great
good
day.
rest of the day.
Take care.
Bye.